everybody for joining in. We are going to kick this wellness webinar off. As you guys come up with your questions, if you just go down to that chat box at the bottom there, you can send questions during the presentation as they come up so you don't forget them, and then we'll just address them at the end. So, alrighty, so 7:06, we're gonna get this going here. So first up, we have our naturopathic doctor, Amy Morrison, talking. She's going to be going over some sleep and some wellness and some other tips and tricks to make sure that you're doing the best during this time.
Perfect. So my name's Amy. I'm the naturopathic doctor at MYo Lab, and I'm really passionate about the foundations of health, which include breath, mindfulness, and sleep. So I'm going to give you a bit of information about that today, as well as some tips that you can take home to integrate into your life. So we'll start with breathing. So breathing is something that we do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's something that we don't even think about, which is crazy. So it's the first thing we do when we wake up, when we enter this world, and it is the last thing we do before we leave. So it's a very powerful tool that we need. And the reason why I like it is because it can control our autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is something that regulates physiologic processes that we don't even realize that we do. So it's our breathing rate, our heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, digestion, and metabolism. And it's made up of two branches. So you're going to have your sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And so the sympathetic nervous system is our fight, flight, and freeze. And it's the classic example that everybody uses. You're getting chased by a lion and your sympathetic nervous system fires up. You release hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine, followed by a surge in cortisol, which we always hear is the stress hormone is cortisol. And then essentially it saves our lives. So you can act quickly, make a response to this stressful, life-threatening situation, and then you'll be okay. The other half of it is our parasympathetic nervous system. And so this is our rest and digest response. This is where we want to spend most of our time when we're relaxing. It helps us to conserve and restore all of our energy and nutrients. It helps us to fix our cells and rebuild when things go wrong. So the issue is not that we have a stress response, it's that it's chronically elevated in this day and age. So typically when our sympathetic nervous system fires, you want our cortisol to spike and then for it to go back down. But we have chronic little things. So whether it be relationships, family, work, problems sleeping, we sort of have this constant surge of cortisol, which can lead to a whole host of health issues. Yeah, so if you have a sympathetic nervous system that's always firing, it can lead to increased risk of obesity, heart disease, hypertension, can lead to insomnia, Alzheimer's and dementia, of course, anxiety and stress, as well as cancer, and a whole host of digestive issues. So digestion, you really need to be in that parasympathetic state in order to digest your food. So since breath can control these two, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, by tuning in and being mindful to your breath, you can really see how your body's feeling. So a lot of people hold their breath or take shallow breaths and breathe into their tops of their lungs. Their shoulders are really high by their ears. And breathing through your mouth. So that's going to stimulate more of a sympathetic nervous system response, which can lead to these chronic issues. So in order to switch that into a parasympathetic, you're going to want to breathe through your nose. So breathing through your nose helps to filter and humidify and regulate the temperature of the air before it enters to the lungs. And when we breathe in the air through our nose, it helps to release nitric oxide, which is known to be a vasodilator, which means it increases blood flow to areas of the body, but it's also a bronchodilator. So it helps you to breathe deeper and more oxygen into the lower lobes, helping to stimulate the vagus nerve. So that's where you hear about deep belly breathing. So one of my favorite breathing exercises is the 4-7-8 breathing. So you're going to inhale for 4 seconds. So this is going to be through your nose. You're going to hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then you're going to exhale for 8 seconds. So you can play around with these times, but as long as that 8, the last number, your exhale breath is longer than your inhale number, that 4, it's going to trigger and switch your parasympathetic system to be in more of a dominant state. So that's going to help you with the rest and digest. And you're going to want to make sure that you're breathing through your nose. So I would repeat this at least 5 times. You can do it for as long as you want, but the 5 times will help you to transition into that rest and digest state. So we sort of touched a bit on mindfulness, but other than breathing, there's other things you can do. So being mindful leads to a greater longevity and better cognitive and physical health as we age. It helps to control inflammation. It regulates stress, helps with mood and anxiety disorders, and chronic disease. So Yeah, breathing is definitely one way you can become mindful. The classic one, of course, is meditation. Other things you can do is exercising when you're eating or brushing your teeth. So I recommend just picking one thing that you do every day and be fully present while you're doing it. So watch your thoughts as they come in and as they leave. With no judgment, and then repeat every day. And so when you first start, it's going to be hard. It's sort of like every other thing that we have to train. The more you do it, the easier it is. So just being consistent with it, and then you get better at it, and then it really can be incorporated into your routine every day. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is sleep, which I'm super passionate about because it's so impactful on health and wellness. Without it, you really can't live your best life. So it plays such a critical role in brain function and our physiology. So it helps to control metabolism, appetite. Your sleep actually helps to regulate how much you eat the next day and how hungry you feel and how satisfied you are. Your immune system also is the most functioning at night, as well as it helps to balance your hormones, and it regulates your cardiovascular. So for a third of our life, we should be sleeping, so 7 to 9 hours, and then the rest of the time you're awake. So this is part of the circadian rhythm, or also known as the sleep-wake cycle. So the sleep-wake cycle is controlled by most commonly known hormones. So melatonin spikes at night, which is what makes us sleepy, and then cortisol is what spikes in the morning, which helps to keep us awake. So in order to know if you're getting proper sleep, I'll just run through a quick definition here. So optimal sleep would be characterized by duration. So 7 to 9 hours, minimum 7 hours. The quality of your sleep. So subjectively, how fast you fall asleep. Can you stay asleep? Are you rested the next day? Do you have energy right when you wake up? And do you have enough energy throughout the day? Objectively, it's super cool, the new tools and technology that have come out that you can actually track your sleep. So whether that be like a Fitbit or a watch or an Oura Ring. Some phones have apps now. Just they all are a bit different in accuracy, but in general, light sleep, you want it to be 60% of your sleeping. So during light sleep, that's when your body goes through the most detoxification. And then deep sleep should be 20% of your sleep, and that's tissue repair and growth, as well as that's when all your cellular energy is going to be restored for you to use the next day. And then the third one is REM sleep, and that's also 20%, should be 20% of your sleep. So this is your dream state. And during dreams, this is when your memories are consolidated. So it's important to hit all three aspects of sleep. So duration and quality. And then the third one is going to be appropriate timing and regularity. So making sure that you're going to bed and waking up at the same time every day is going to be really important. So because it's a circadian rhythm and it happens 24 hours a day, you can train your body to know when you're going to go to bed and when you're going to wake up. So making sure that you are consistent will help you sleep better. Appropriate timing is also important. So because it's a 24-hour cycle, each organ has a specific times that it regulates and restores within that cycle. So the most important when we sleep being the gallbladder and the liver. So the gallbladder is between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. and the liver is 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. And this is important for detoxification, as well as our liver is involved in more than 500 physiological processes. So we really want our liver to be functioning optimally. So making sure that you're in bed before 11 p.m. is optimal. And then the last one is making sure that there's just absence of any sleep disturbances. So common sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, mouth breathing. Back to breathing, you really want to be breathing through your nose while you're sleeping. Insomnia, and then both sleep maintenance, so falling asleep and staying asleep insomnia. Common factors that affect sleep that we can mostly control, and we know sort of right off the bat. So alcohol, overconsumption of caffeine, pain, shift work, jet lag, children. Some of them you can control, some of them you can't. So definitely looking into those influences and then taking a deeper dive and look into other things that can affect your sleep. So sex hormones for sure. So estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone levels need to be optimal. Progesterone levels play a huge role in sleep. It's sort of like our chill pill hormone. So we want to make sure that those levels for sure are good. Thyroid hormones as well you want to look at. And then gut health. So our microbiome, which is the bacteria that coats our digestive system, can make at least 70% of our melatonin. So that hormone that we need to make us feel sleepy is produced in the gut. So if you're having any digestive health concerns, it would be interesting to look into that to see how that's affecting your sleep. Toxins is another really common reason. So as I talked before about the liver and the gallbladder time being 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., a lot of people tend to wake up between 1 to 3 and at the same time every night over and over. So what the body's trying to tell you essentially is that the liver has too much processing to do. So really working on reducing toxin exposure and helping the body to detoxify will help you sleep through that time period. The last one on that I wanted to talk about is blood sugar imbalances. So regulating your blood sugar, because what happens when our blood sugar dips throughout the night, we need cortisol to be released in order to increase our blood sugar back up. And cortisol is what we need to wake us up in the morning. So if it's being released in the middle of the night to control our blood sugar, then it's going to wake you up as well. So those are common things to look into for sure if you're having issues with your sleep. But there's other tips and tricks that you can do starting today and tomorrow. Since it's a 24-hour cycle, it actually starts first thing in the morning, which can affect and improve your sleep. So as soon as you wake up, the best thing to do is get outside and go sit out in the sun for 10 to 15 minutes. So light is what regulates our circadian rhythm. In the morning, light helps with the increase in cortisol. So that gives us energy. And then at night, the lack of light when it gets dark, that actually tells our brain that it can convert serotonin into melatonin in order to make us sleepy and go to bed. The next tip would be to not drink caffeine after 2 p.m. So the half-life of caffeine is actually 7 hours. So even if you're able to fall asleep, even if you drink coffee late in the day, you might not be getting a good quality sleep. The next tip that you can do is commit to putting your phone away 2 hours before bed. So as we just talked about, the light from your phone and your computer blocks that conversion of serotonin to melatonin. So you actually won't get the melatonin spike that you need to fall asleep as well as get a good quality sleep. And with caffeine, that's sort of the same. If you can fall asleep, you might be able to fall asleep if you play on your phone right before bed, but you're not actually going to sleep as deep as you could without it. And then the last tip that I have for you is related to breathing. So if you have like a busy mind before bed or you can't fall asleep, doing that breathing exercise, the 4-7-8 right before bed, can really help shift you from sympathetic into parasympathetic mode, which is what you need to be able to fall asleep. Yeah, so that was just a quick insight into a few fundamentals of health and tips that you can integrate into your daily routine. So yeah, I saw a few people maybe posted questions. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat box there and then we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Thanks.
We are going to move on to Nora, and Nora is our registered dietitian, and she's going to be talking about some tips and tricks to optimize your nutrition during this time. Take it away, Nora.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit today about preventing muscle mass loss with nutrition. And I thought I'd start off just by talking about a little bit on why we actually can lose muscle mass. So I know during this time, we haven't been able to use gym facilities normally. So our level of activity is probably a little bit different than it usually is. So basically what can happen when we're less active is that we can begin to lose a little bit of muscle mass. There are a couple other things that can play into muscle mass loss. One being aging, unfortunately. So after the age of 30, we begin to lose about 3 to 5% of our muscle mass per decade. Other factors that can play in include hormonal changes, so lower testosterone in men and lower estrogen in women. And of course, dietary factors, so not getting enough calories in can play into losing some muscle, and as well as not getting enough protein in. And the other thing that can play in is actually if we are trying to lose weight and we're on a low-calorie diet that causes rapid weight loss, then we can actually lose muscle mass quite quickly. So I'm going to talk today about 4 key things that you can do to help prevent this from happening. So the first tip that I'm going to share is we need to be eating enough calories during the day. And I know a common thought right now might be, well, I'm not able to exercise as I normally can, so maybe I'll just skip a meal, or I'll skip a snack, or I'll try to make up for this somewhere else. The truth of the matter is that we still need to be eating, for the most part, about 3 balanced meals per day. and probably need maybe 1 or 2 snacks in addition to that. So we definitely want to make sure that first of all, we're eating enough during the day. We're avoiding skipping our meals. And then my second tip is going to be eat enough protein-rich foods. So protein comes from, of course, meat and poultry, fish, dairy products, beans and legumes, tofu, nuts and seeds, and eggs. So protein should really be about 10 to 35% of our total daily calories. And that's based on the macronutrient distribution range. And so that's going to look a little different for everyone. So depending on how active you are, depending on your weight, we all need different amounts of protein during the day. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. For a healthy adult who is not that physically active, we need about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. That's for someone who is not so active. Our protein needs also vary depending on whether or not we're pregnant. So pregnant women actually need a little bit more protein during the day, about 1.1 grams per kilogram of body weight. And then lactating women as well need even more than that, so 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. And then, of course, when we look at our athletes, athletes will need higher amounts of protein generally. And so a good rule of thumb is that endurance athletes will likely need 1.2 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And when we get into strength and power athletes, they can actually require 1.2 to 1.7 grams. So I know these numbers may not mean a whole lot to you, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate that we all have different protein needs. We all need a different amount during the day. And one of the key things I want to say here is that you can really focus on getting enough protein in by making sure that each meal you have during the day has a protein-rich food with it, or a combination of protein-rich foods in that meal. So we really want to be sure that each of our meals includes a good protein-rich food. So we want to eat enough. We want to eat enough protein-rich foods. And then the third tip I have for you is that we want to distribute that protein intake evenly throughout the day. So studies have shown that about 20 grams of high quality protein at every meal will maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So we want to have an equal amount of protein at each of our meals. And data from the US actually demonstrates that adults, for the most part, are skewing their protein intake. So meaning that they typically have more of their protein at supper time, and other meals tend to be lacking during the day. So for example, the mean protein consumption for adults is about threefold at dinner when compared with breakfast. So at dinner, most of the time, people are getting in about 38 grams on average. And then when we compare that with breakfast, we're only getting 13 grams in. So that's quite a big difference. So we really want to try to make sure that we've got that equal amount kind of coming in during the day. My fourth tip is that we want to consume a variety of protein sources. And most importantly, we want to be including proteins that are rich in the amino acid leucine. So research suggests that of all the essential amino acids that we have, leucine may be the limiting factor in initiating muscle protein synthesis. So we really want to make sure that we've got some foods that are rich in the amino acid leucine in our diet. Some of the best sources of leucine are dairy products, beef, poultry, seafood, pork, peanuts, beans, lentils, and soybeans. So if we can get a nice variety coming into our diet, then we know that we're more likely to get all those essential amino acids in that are really important for maintaining our muscle mass. So just to summarize those tips, so we want to be eating enough calories during the day. We want to be avoiding skipping any meals. We want to eat enough protein-rich foods. We want to evenly distribute that protein intake throughout the day. And then we want to consume a variety of protein sources, including those rich in leucine. So now I'm going to give some practical tips to kind of add a little bit more protein into some of your meals. So when we talked about breakfast is the one that we tend to be lacking in protein. So one of the tips that I'm going to give is that you can actually mix up some nuts, hemp hearts, flax seeds, and even wheat germ, and just kind of combine that all together. And then you can add that, like add a scoop into your cereals or add it into your yogurt in the morning. And that'll just give you a little extra protein boost. The next thing that you can do is look at adding protein powder when you're baking. So adding protein powder into, let's say, pancakes or muffins or hot cereals, that'll help you, again, getting some more in at breakfast time. You can also play around with maybe trying some different egg dishes, such as quiches or omelets, just trying new recipes, trying some different things. And then another great way to get protein in during the day is actually through your snacks. So you can always try Greek or Icelandic yogurt for a snack. It's really nice and high in protein. You can throw in some chia seeds or sliced almonds for toppings for even more protein in there. Maybe a whey protein smoothie for a snack, or cottage cheese for a snack. Those are all really great protein sources. I think the other thing that's really important is just planning. So planning ahead to have quick and easy things that you can grab during the week. So even keeping hard-boiled eggs on hand, for example, keep them in the fridge. You can easily add them into salads, and then it's just quick and easy and there for you. And the final tip I'm going to give is you can, again, play around with adding nuts into your baking. So add them into cookies, add them into loaves. You can really add them into almost anything. And those are really just a couple of key tips that go along with just making sure that you're spreading that protein evenly throughout the day and getting, you know, an equal amount at each meal, and really focusing on that breakfast meal. So yeah, those are my tips.
Wicked. Thanks, Nora, for everything there. So next up is myself, actually. So I'm not really going to introduce myself. So I'm going to be talking about getting the most out of your home workouts and how to prevent some muscle mass loss during all of this. So the first thing that I have for you guys is not forgetting about the warm up. Okay, it's when you're not in a gym setting and you're working out at home, it's pretty easy to just jump straight into the workout routine, especially if you're following on with a YouTube video or some of the free workouts that have been put out there. And if they don't provide a solid warm-up that you're used to, you should probably be addressing some of the mobility stuff beforehand and getting that heart rate up. Okay. Think about the position you spent the most time in since your last time working out. So whether you were sitting, standing, or lying down, and address what that position may have done to your new normal. For example, if you were sitting, you may want to address thoracic extension by using a foam roller or the front of a couch to go through that movement. You would also want to address hip extension by going through some active split squats or hanging out in a couch stretch for a little bit. So that would be with your back foot up on the back portion of the couch where you are standing or where your back would go against, and then having your knee on the place where you would sit down and your other leg rested on the ground, so you have that nice extension in that back leg. Okay. Once you're done the warm up, really make sure that your heart rate has been elevated. Think about what you've been doing in that last time since you've been your last workout. So if your heart rate has stayed relatively low, this is now your new normal of your cardiovascular system, and you will not be exactly primed and ready to go for an intense workout or a highly demanding task such as a workout. Okay, so you really want to get that heart rate up, and you want to get the body moving smoothly before you get into that workout. Okay, so the workouts themselves, if you are working with limited equipment, try and do more full body workouts. So ideally, you want to have a squat pattern, like a bodyweight squat, a hinge pattern, like a glute bridge, a push pattern, like a push-up, and a pull pattern, such as a bent over row with some bands or a dumbbell, or even a table row, where you could plant your feet on the ground, kind of position yourself underneath the table, and then grab either side of the table to pull yourself up. Okay. Try not to pull up too quickly, as your nose may take the brunt of the force on the bottom of the table, and make sure that your table is heavy enough and stable enough to support your body weight while you're pulling. okay? So once you kind of go through these movements, you want to be working into higher rep ranges if you have limited equipment and you don't have as much resistance. Okay, this is one way to reduce the amount of muscle mass lost in this period, but you could also take this time and kind of go work in the opposite direction and address kind of your competency over capacity. Okay, and what I mean by that is slowing down the movement and seeing how many reps you can get until you feel like you have to compensate in some way to keep going. Okay, so really planning out the movement and thinking about it in your mind and getting that mind to muscle connection and getting really comfortable with those movements. So for example, if you're not quite comfortable with your squat, trying different foot positions, different angles of your feet, trying to go through that nice and smooth, nice and slow, and see how your hips and your back respond to that movement, and play around with different positions so that when you're back into the gym or you're getting back into your routine, you're coming back ready and primed and better than ever. Okay. So once you feel, so for example, with that, you're going to kind of a technical failure. And then once you feel like your pattern has changed, you want to stop the exercise. So essentially you're doing as many reps as you can until your technique breaks down. Okay, that's going to save you a lot of pain and a lot of nagging injuries in the upcoming future. Okay. For those of you who are more concerned about the muscle loss themselves, try and push your limits. Okay. What I mean by this is don't go on just until it starts to feel uncomfortable or you start to feel that burn in your muscles. You want to start counting when you feel that burn. Okay. When you talk about hypertrophy, it really boils down to the amount of time a muscle is under tension and the load on the muscle itself. So since we can't increase the load on the muscle, we're going to have to increase the amount of time under tension by either adding slower eccentrics and controlled reps or taking ourselves to that muscular failure. So your muscular mass and strength is also going to be relative to how long you've been training. So if you're just starting out, or you would consider yourself a little bit more of a beginner, you're working out 1 or 2 times a week and you're just slowly getting into it, and then COVID hit and now your routine's kind of out of whack and you're not working out as much as you'd like to be, you're not actually going to see as much of a change. Okay. Conversely, if you're someone that works out pretty regularly, you're working out 4 or 5 times a week and you have a lot of muscle mass, you may see a significant drop in that muscle mass, and you're going to see more of a drop in that muscle mass than a beginner. Right. You also want to take this time to address some mobility and stability stuff. Okay. It's not all about muscle, it's all about muscle. But if you take that time to kind of address some of that mobility and the stability work, to take away some of that pain or some of the issues that you've been having in the past, you can address some of these deficiencies in your movement. So you really want to focus on the limiting factors within your movement. So I always go back to the squat because it's easy to break down. But for example, the squat, if your ankles don't have a lot of mobility or your hips don't have a lot of mobility and you're having difficulty, before COVID, you were having difficulty getting that depth in your squat, or it was causing you some irritation in your hips or your back, you can take the time to address some of those issues that are your limiting factors. So going through some stretching to go through some dorsiflexion in the ankles, or holding a pigeon stretch, or going through some of the other mobility drills that we've been posting on our Instagram. So hopefully you guys are following along there, because there's some good tips and tricks on there to address some of those mobility issues if you're having some troubles narrowing that down on your own. Okay. So you can also take this time to find out where you feel the weakest or more unstable in a movement. Okay. So for example, if you're walking downstairs, if you have trouble with walking downstairs and you feel like your knees are always kind of give out when you're walking down, or you're not feeling too stable when you're walking downstairs, you can address that by going through that movement more slowly and supported, and progressing it accordingly. Okay. So with the stair example there, you can be holding onto a railing and do a single leg step down, nice and slow and controlled while holding onto that railing. You're nice and supported, you're in a safe position, and you're building up the strength in your quads and your glutes and your adductors to control yourself when you go down that stair. So as you progress, you can progress by not touching the foot fully onto the ground and kind of hovering for an inch or two at the bottom there and then working your way back up, or going down to, if you you're trying to start this off and you can't even reach the ground, or you're having pain in your knee when you go to do that, or you're starting to feel unstable when you go to do that, you can start with a raised surface on the ground so it's less of a range of motion, and then work your way to take that object out and get all the way down, okay? And then progressing eventually to not holding on to the railing at all, and really working on that balance and that control. This is also a really great time to work on your core stability. So this is something that's lacking even in the highest of athletes. Some of the top powerlifters, they're still doing these accessory core and pelvic stability exercises because it's something that our bodies need to do all these movements and do all these demands of daily living. And it's a functional movement, and that stability, like I said, it's really is a pillar in functional training. Okay, so movements like the bird dog hold, so getting on a quadruped position, so on your hands and knees, and then extending your back leg and an opposite arm. So say your left leg is raised back in the air, trying to kick back straight to the wall, and then your right arm would be reaching towards the wall in forward there, okay? And you could start off by holding this position for about 3 seconds, switching to the other side, holding that for 3 seconds, and then working up to hold that a little bit longer, and really focusing on keeping that neutral spine and getting that core engaged, okay? And then also, this is a good opportunity, like Amy mentioned, is to work on your belly breathing, work on that diaphragmatic breathing while you're holding that position as well, okay? In addition, dead bug. If you've been to physio for your back, you've probably done dead bugs before. And if you've been to MYo Lab, you have definitely done dead bugs before. Okay, so laying on your back, same idea, opposite leg, opposite arm, reaching forward and reaching back with the arm. Okay, keeping that neutral spine and keeping that low back flush with the ground. Okay, in addition, you could be doing adductor planks. So starting off with a bent knee, and having your knee and your thigh up on a couch or on a chair, and then holding a side plank position. Okay? People often forget about the adductors, but they are a staple in terms of the musculature around pelvic stability. And going back to the squat, they are extremely important in terms of developing your squat pattern and your squat strength. Okay. And then lastly, a regular side plank is also a great exercise to work on that core stability and improve overall pelvic stability. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up a little short here. So I am going to flip this over to Evan. He is going to wrap up the presentation portion of this meeting.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Evan Schwentz. I'm chiropractor and owner of MYo Lab. First off, thanks Amy, Nora, and Mitch for that great information. And thanks to each of you for tuning in and taking the initiative in your own health and wellness. So first off, we're going to talk about home office ergonomics, keeping it simple here. Perhaps the biggest point here, then the one that I want to start with, is known as work-life separation. So this is something that has become very prevalent in people's lives and without much notice to prepare for. Perhaps you've noticed that now you're suddenly not finished working at 5 p.m., but rather working through dinner, answering emails into the evening. This is very common with working from home, and something I can personally attest to when I started my home chiropractic business before opening MYo Lab. Next thing you know, it's midnight, you're still answering emails, and there's an invasion of privacy. So how do we take care of that? One of the first things is to create a dedicated workspace if you have the space in your house. Obvious statement here, keep that distraction of your pet, spouse, child away from you, and create a routine as close to your previous normal as you can. This is huge for mental health, as routines do help us stay on task and not go down a deep, dark rabbit hole. So this not only helps with work productivity, but also general health, wellness, stress, and sleep. Next thing, leave the food in the kitchen. And furthermore, just please don't have your office in the kitchen as well. So that pesky quarantine 15 is the new freshman 15, as many people are experiencing weight gain. So I'm glad both Amy and Nora provided some excellent info on this topic this evening, and Mitch hit on some exercises in case maybe you have been, guilty of the quarantine 15 yourself. So be proactive about keeping the snacks away, as well as establishing a firm timeline for lunch and other breaks, just as you would at work. Keep it simple. Now, if you're using a laptop, I'd consider investing in an external monitor. This is actually a pretty affordable thing. You can get a really proper monitor for only a couple $100, and it's going to help reduce your eye strain as well as your ergonomics. This helps ensure you can look straight at your monitor rather than looking down, but please don't get a monitor and have it set up to the side, as your neck is going to get kinked up unless you really want to come see one of us at MYo Lab on a regular basis, and we'll help you out, but let's try not to do that. Now, get up and move every 30 minutes at least. It doesn't need to be much. This is a common myth. I think people often think, well, I don't have time to get up and move throughout the workday. Whether you're at work in the office or you are at home, get up and move every 30 minutes. I'm talking even if it's 15 seconds. Studies have been very clear in its benefit. So maybe go grab some water, walk up and down your stairs once, do a couple bodyweight squats, do the couch stretch that Mitch is talking about. Take a break and read through our Instagram and do one of our suggested exercises. Anything, just keep on moving and keep it simple. Now, this not only helps with your circulation and muscle stiffness, but it also gives your eyes a critical break from the light of our computers, which drastically affect your sleep and overall mood, as Amy really got into there as well. Now, when you are sitting, let's sit with your elbows and knees at a 90-degree angle to help reduce your joint load and keep your body circulating. So a solid office chair is obviously a great investment, but sometimes those can run several $100s. So if money's a little bit tight due to everything happening right now, simply modify your chair by adding a cushion, pillow, or towel. Modify your computer keyboard with a cost-effective stand or even books. And think outside the box a little bit. You can even, depending on your setup, stream your computer screen to your TV. So you have a larger screen and you can maybe be more ergonomic, sit upright for that entirety as well. Just don't get distracted on Netflix, of course. So my summary for home ergonomics for your home office: set a schedule and stick to it. Create a designated office space. Leave food in the kitchen. Get up and move at least every 30 minutes, even if it's only for 15 seconds, and improve your ergonomics with your screen and or chair. So that way you don't need to come in to see us for urgent care and we can continue on with your health and wellness. That's the portion I have for the home office ergonomics. Now I just want to get into some business updates for everybody. So most of this was in our newsletter as well as on our social media platforms, but we are officially reopening next Thursday, May 14th, and super excited to do this. Now we're going to only have the professions of chiropractic, naturopathic medicine, and registered dietitian. So that means that we will be having 5 of our practitioners there and 1 admin. We're going to begin this phase with the following hours. Sundays will be 10 to 4 p.m. and Monday through Thursday, 2 to 8 p.m., being closed Fridays and Saturdays. Massage is currently in stage 2 of the provincial return plan, while personal training is currently in stage 3. So those dates are, of course, dependent on how stage 1's return goes. So we're hoping to have massage back June 1st and personal training June 15th. Those are the timelines we have set, and those are the timelines that we've also opened our online booking for. So please, after this meeting, after you've asked your questions and gotten your answers, please take a look at our online booking page by clicking the Book Now link on the homepage at myolab.ca, and you can see all of our available openings with the respective practitioners. So then you can hold your spot. Again, we've already done this going into the future, so you can book massages June 1st onwards and training June 15th onwards. Now, if things change, of course, we will be able to get in touch with you and modify those accordingly. Now, what happens when you are at MYo Lab? Is it safe? So measures are going to be taken, including going above and beyond the public health mandates to ensure your safety. Many clinics were able to open up, well, we were technically able to open up this past Monday, but we decided to lay it off until next Thursday so we can get some more equipment in, including infrared thermometer. So each time you come in, we will have certain measures in place to ensure your safety, such as taking your infrared thermometer reading on your forehead, asking COVID symptom questionnaires at the time of booking, as well as at the top of the stairs before you even enter MYo Lab, offering optional surgical masks and gloves to all members, requiring proper hand hygiene upon entering MYo Lab, adhering to social distancing measures both in the waiting room and the treatment areas, and of course, all of our staff will undergo the same strict measures upon arrival for their shift, so you can ensure that they are healthy and safe when you come in for the healthcare that you need and deserve, while we will also be wearing surgical masks during our entire shift and allowing for increased time between practice members for cleaning and to reduce contact between each of you. Your safety is our primary concern, and we truly look forward to getting back to serving each and every one of you in the lab, and we thank you so far for your support. Mitch, we'll head it back over to you for the question and answer period.
So yeah, just addressing some of these questions here. We'll start it off. So Amy, do you recommend breathing out through your nose or through your mouth for the 4-7-8 breathing protocol that you had mentioned? And what would be the difference for that?
Okay, so for the 4-7-8, you're going to be breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. So there's definitely lots of breathing techniques and reasons that you can breathe in and out of your mouth, which is great. But for this one specifically, to help switch into parasympathetic and increase your oxygen content in your body, when you inhale, the conversion of oxygen and carbon dioxide happen, but it also continues to happen as you exhale. So when you exhale through your nose, it's a lot slower than when you exhale through your mouth. So you're actually going to get more oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange if you exhale through your nose. While you exhale through your nose, it just takes a bit longer, which helps with that exchange of oxygen into your body.
Amy, do you recommend taking melatonin if you have problems falling asleep?
Yeah, so I think melatonin is great to help people fall asleep. If it's a chronic, if you're using it every night to help you fall asleep, then no, I don't recommend using it. I think that getting to the root cause of why you can't fall asleep is going to be the most beneficial. Using melatonin when you go on a trip, if you have jet lag, if it's a one-off reason that you can't fall asleep, then I think that it is beneficial. But to use it in the long term, I think there's better things we can do. And the reason I say that is because melatonin is a hormone in our body, and when we take hormones, external hormones with everything else, whether it be estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, it reduces our own body's production of melatonin. So I just don't want to personally play around with that. I would want to support your body's own production more than using a supplement.
And then lastly, for you, Amy, what happens if your mouth is naturally open during sleep? Is there something that we could do to keep our mouth closed during sleep?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So if you can breathe through your nose during the day and not during the night, then something's happening at night that's making you not breathe that way. So whether it be an obstructive issue that you're not getting enough air, if you have seasonal allergies, sinus congestion, then you'd want to address those issues. If none of those issues are there and you're just breathing through your mouth and how to stop that, then a good way to try to see if you can actually breathe through your nose, it's called mouth taping. So you actually take 3M micropore tape and just you can buy one with slits in it if you are nervous about it, or you just essentially tape your mouth shut and see if you can breathe through your nose. So that is actually a technique that I personally do, and it has made the biggest difference in my sleep, making sure I breathe through my nose at night. There is more research out there about actually mouth taping, and a lot of dentists are recommending it because it has a lot to do with oral health as well. So making sure that you have enough saliva in your mouth while you're sleeping, so it prevents cavities because it balances out the pH and the certain bacteria that aren't able to grow when your saliva is in your mouth, and it actually is correlated with straighter teeth as well. So I would recommend trying that first and seeing if you can actually breathe through your nose. If you can't, you'll take the tape off right away. Nothing will happen. You'll wake up and you'll just take it off. So that would be the first thing that I would try, and then definitely investigating as to why you can't breathe through your nose. So if it's allergies or if it's an obstructive issue, and then going from there.
So moving on to Nora now. Is protein from powdered source just as beneficial as protein from a whole food source?
So that's a really good question. So protein from a powdered source can be just as beneficial, and I think often it is one of the more convenient options when we are in a hurry, and perhaps it's a day where we haven't been able to eat our usual meals or that type of thing. So absolutely, taking a whey protein powder, for example, that can certainly help boost your protein intake during the day, and can also provide some essential amino acids as well. So absolutely, powdered protein definitely has its place, and I think it can be a good option and a convenient option at times as well.
Shifting over to Evan here. Evan, do you recommend sitting on an exercise ball when working at a computer?
Do I recommend sitting on an exercise ball while sitting at a computer? If you can keep your posture correct, then absolutely. I mean, you do see a lot of people will jump on the exercise ball train because it's a very popular thing and we hear about how it's healthy. And the next thing you know, they're slouched forward, grounding their lower back and their head is kinked forward. So if you're doing all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really matter. The purpose of the exercise ball is to engage our core. You should be sitting near the edge of the ball, not all the way back. Your hamstring shouldn't be on that ball really, just a little bit of your sit bones or your butt. If that's sitting on the ball, you're going to engage your core, because if you don't, you're going to be rolling around and tumbling. So if you're doing it correctly, an exercise ball can be a great adjunct and only costs about $15 versus a few $100 chair. So consider those facts.
Wicked, thanks for that, Evan. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us individually, or shoot us a message on our Instagram page at MYo Lab_YYC. If you're not following us already, try and give us a follow there, because we do have some other tips and tricks for you there. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning into the webinar here, and we'll hope to see you soon when we reopen.
Take care.
Thanks.